good people.
Hey, welcome to Growing Up Low Country. I'm Liz.
I'm Danny, and new month, new episode. And last month, because of the weather, stupid snow, we had to do it remote. But this time, we're back in the studio. We're back in the studio here.
Yes.
So to speak. Man, good to be back in person. So just catching up. So what were some of the more notable things that you did in between episodes?
Well, my daughter got to cash in on her Christmas gift, and we went to Florida for a few days and checked out Disney World. It happened to it was Super Bowl Sunday, and then they sent Jalen Hurt to Florida. Like, what are you going to do when you win the Super Bowl? They go to Disney World,
Right.
So it was crowded with Eagles fans. Every Eagle fan. So that was interesting. And then they were also having a cheerleading competition. So 10,000 cheerleaders from across our nation.
Holy cow.
Gathered in Orlando. And,
Wow.
But, we met some really interesting people in line, because there are those. And we had a really good time. It was a blast. And we went with some friends from our neighborhood who we love hanging out with, and it was a great time. And other stuff. I did some hiking, fishing, but not catching fish, that kind of stuff. But yeah, what about you?
Well, so I actually probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I actually went down to Savannah, and I hadn't been down there in years. Actually, the reason why I went down to that area is because the South Carolina State Museum does a Harvesting Heritage event every month. And they actually did it down at the Penn Center at St. Helena Island. But that wasn't until 6 o'clock. So I was like, you know what? I got some time to kill. I'll just hit the road early. I hadn't been to Savannah since moving my sister out because she used to live there. And and the last time we helped her move was the last time I was down there. I think that was like 2018. And of course, being from the Charleston area, the first place I stop is Carrie Hilliard's. Oh my God. That inner child was doing so many backhand springs.
Still same menu?
Still the same menu. Tasted. I mean, as soon as you walk in, the smell, it's just like that nostalgia just punches you square in the face. I'm like, this is exactly where I need to be. And I got the shrimp and scallops with the French fries and the cheddar baked potato. My goodness. And fun times. That was some fun times. And just kill some time around the city, just getting reacclimated with it. And I stopped at Crystal because they actually have crystals down there still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
we ran them out of town, didn't we? They don't have them here anymore.
No, they closed all of those a long time ago. I think there's one in Savannah and there's one up in Murrells Inlet. Then I stopped at the outlet, snatched up a couple of Funko Pops, which, my friend shout out to Priest Jacobs. He got me a couple of Funko Pops, and I've been bitten by the bug ever since. And then left Savannah, and then made the hour trip down to St. Helena Island, and that was a lot of fun. I think the last time I was at the Penn Center, I think I went there on a field trip. Like, it might have been in 6th grade. It was a long time ago, and just the rich history of that program. I mean, Martin Luther King actually, did some practice. He practiced his "I Have a Dream" speech at the Penn Center. Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, and just to be in that building where he did that was awesome. The food was great. Just got to learn about the people of St. Helena Island, how during the pandemic they learned to basically live off of the land. They would have people in the community that would like gather the crops, and they would have people out in the water getting the seafood and stuff, and they fed the community.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I mean, I think the lady said, one of the panelists said they served upwards of 600 meals a week.
Wow.
I was like, man, that is incredible.
It can be done when push comes to shove.
Yeah.
Folks step up.
Yes. I was extremely impressed with that. And the food, oh my gosh. They served okra gumbo with shrimp, and I never had collard greens prepared this way. They had it finely shredded. They served it cold. It was kind of like a salad. The way they shredded it was almost like the consistency of coleslaw, but they added like little chunks of red beets and red peas to it, and it was just packed with so much flavor. Oh my goodness. and they still had some left over. I was like, man, do y'all have a to-go container? And I was set. I was set for the next day, and
That's awesome.
that was a really good experience. And they're going to do another one on March 22nd. They normally do them at the South Carolina State Museum, and this one, they like each event they highlight different regions of the state. So it did the Low Country this month. Then next month they're highlighting the PD region.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to going back there. I think it was either my third or fourth straight event that I went to for Harvesting Heritage. So yeah, that's what I've been getting into, and I'm going to up to Charlotte for the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's been, gosh, I hadn't been up there since I think April of last year. One of my favorite podcasts is called The Black Guy Who Tips, and they do a live show. They're doing a live show at the Blumenthal Theater, and I'm going there. They're doing it on Friday.
Nice.
So I'm going to hit that up, and then loosely thinking about going to the Charlotte FC game, because I've never been to a Major League Soccer game. They got that game at 2, and then the Hornets game is at 6 p.m. So
That's a great day, man.
Yeah. So
Who do the Hornets play?
they play the Washington Wizards, so the tickets are stupid cheap because they both suck. They both suck.
Please, someone come watch us dribble this ball around.
So now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the program. So the first thing we always do on Growing Up Low Country with Liz and Danny is the teacher spotlight. So Liz, who is your teacher spotlight for this episode?
I'm going to go with Miss Patricia Bendel, who was 6th grade language arts. And the one thing I loved about her, when you're in 6th grade, like you want to think you're grown, but you're still kind of a baby, So she just seemed to thread that needle on treating you like you're grown, but still letting you have a safe spot. And she would read to us every class, read out loud to us. And I thought that was the best part of the day. And she would read the Sideways Stories from Wayside School.
Really?
And we would get the giggles so hard in that class. And my kids read those books, and it just brings me a lot of joy because those things have been around a long time. And they still slay. the jokes are still funny. It was good stuff. And she had us writing a lot. Like we wrote on all kinds of topics, and she was very encouraging. So,
good. So who were some of your favorite classmates that you sat next to in that class?
I definitely passed a lot of notes with Elizabeth Newsom Hoover. Stephen and I were in the same class on that one. Still a lot of note passing. Hamilton. Trying to think. Joey Jenkins was in that one. And I can remember, he has got one of the best laughs of any human. But it's like his jaw unhinges and his whole head splits in half.
Yes.
And the way he could laugh at those books, man, we had the best time.
Man, that's all right. Miss Bendel's class, she didn't teach me in middle school, but yeah, I remember a lot of my friends just saying nothing but good things about her. So my teacher spotlight is actually a two-prong answer. I was in ROTC in 9th grade, and my teacher spotlights are is Sergeant Ramsey and Sergeant Wilinacek. So I begrudgingly joined ROTC. It was at the behest of my mom. She was like, it would look good on your transcript and you could possibly get a scholarship from it. I'm like, you know what? All right, fine. And so Sergeant Ramsey, basically he would instruct us on like Tuesdays and Thursdays. And basically we would be outside just practicing our marching drills and stuff. And I remember he had occasionally, here we go again, marching down the avenue, here we go again, 2 more weeks and we'll be through, And I was like, man, this is so dumb. And luckily enough, I had Randy Cooper, who was marching behind me, and I had LaToya Bradley marching to my left. So we would make up our own marching cadences under our breath.
I can only imagine what LaToya came up with.
Oh my! I can't even say it on here.
Okay,
but it was some.
This is a family program.
Yeah, it was very good material. I'll say that much. And Sergeant Ramsey, he looked a lot like, if you remember Beavis and Butthead, the dude Sergeant Buzzcut.
Yeah.
He reminded me so much of him because he had that same, like, that state trooper style haircut. And Sergeant Wilenachek, believe it or not, and a lot of people may not know this about me, but I have a very just like wild fascination with airplanes. And Sergeant Wilenachek was the reason why he was the person that really sparked my interest with airplanes, because the days that Sergeant Ramsey was in charge of the class, he would be in charge. Sergeant Wilenachek would be in charge of the class, and we would just be in the ROTC trailer. Mm-hmm. And the stuff that he would teach to us was basically pertaining to the Air Force. That was our branch of the military branch we had for our ROTC. And it was either about the Air Force or it was about aviation. And I'll never forget, he played the documentary of the SR-71 Blackbird, and my mind was so blown. To this day, that's still my favorite plane because it's just big, just had a real sleek design to it. It really was ahead of its time. It was a spy plane, and it had that matte black finish, and I think its top speed was like Mach 2.2. Like, it could get from LA to New York in 90 minutes.
Now, are you the guy that goes and sees the Blue Angels and stuff when they come?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, my mom.
Dedicated.
It's been a long time since I've seen the Blue Angels, but I remember actually Mom took the family to, I think it was Shaw Air Force Base. In the, it wasn't the Blue Angels, it was the Thunderbirds that flew that Saturday. And man, I was in my element. I was, man, look at those planes go. And like the SR-71, the A-10 Warthog, and like the Concorde plane. So that was what really kickstarted my love for aviation. And also every week on Thursday, because those were the days that we were designated to wear our uniforms. We used to say ROTC stood for Rotten Old Thursday Clothes. And
y'all look sharp though.
Yeah, it was that polyester and that wool though. It was not pleasant. And so we would stand at attention, and Sergeant Wilenachek and Sergeant Ramsey would inspect our uniforms. But once a year, we would have an annual inspection. So every single ROTC student would meet out in front of the high school, and they would bring in 2 higher ranking officials from the Air Force to inspect our uniforms. And I'll never forget. Do you remember Kevin Post?
Yes.
Kevin Post. Oh, brother. So we were standing in. So all of the students were all flanked in position, and Kevin Post comes running. He was, number one, he was like 10 to 15 minutes late. And number two, you could look at his uniform. He clearly threw it in the washing machine and hung it out to dry. Because with the ROTC uniforms, you take them to the dry cleaners.
Oh, yeah.
And I had never in my life seen a suit more wrinkled. And I'll never forget Sergeant Wilenachek. And he's for the most part, he's very even keeled and mild mannered. He saw Kevin Post, number one, show up late, and number two, have this super wrinkly uniform, and he just goes, man, what the fuck?
Oh dear.
I'm like, he broke character. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, and it took everything. And again, LaToya Bradley was standing right next to me, and it took everything in us to not laugh.
Well,
I mean, which I completely understand why he said what he said, especially with, you got company over, basically.
yes. Well, I bet you though, take me back. Takia Gibbs was in that.
She was.
And I bet you she made up for anything not perfect. I bet Takia Gibbs made up for it. I mean, she
didn't play. Takia Gibbs
I think she's like the boss of the Air Force or something now. Like,
yeah.
I hope so. I would trust her. That sounds like a great plan. Let's put her in charge, please.
Man, that's a great idea. I remember we had a military ball in Takia Gibbs. We got down, man. That was a cool event, and I'll never forget me and Nathan Gordon. So our last period was gym class, and we both forgot our sneakers. So both of us had to run the 40-yard dash in our ROTC shoes.
I would have gone barefoot, I think, just to.
In hindsight, I should have.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was a bad experience. The back of my feet were so cut up, it was ridiculous. But now getting into another very integral part of our childhood was PBS programming. I tell you, the amount of time that my sister and I used to spend as children just sitting in front of the TV watching Channel 7 every day. So what were some of your fondest memories of PBS?
Well, real little Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, and Reading Rainbow, obviously. But my number one all-time favorite was Anne of Green Gables.
Really?
Yes. Oh man, that was my happy place. And my dad and I used to sit around and watch that Cajun cooking show with Justin
Wilson. I guarantee.
I guarantee.
Yes.
And he never measured anything, and you never got to taste it. But in theory, it looked pretty good when it all was said and done.
Yeah.
So we'd sit around and watch all of that. Anything by Ken Burns.
Oh my God, yes.
And I mean, he if you really break it down, it's basically like cardboard cutouts of him just floating stuff across the screen with a narrator and some ominous music. But it works.
It did.
It works. The one he does on baseball.
That's my favorite one.
Last night, Casey and I watched one on Al Capone. That was interesting. Learned a lot. I mean, you always learn something when you have that program on. And there was a hot minute where Casey and I were debating moving to Canada before we had children. And I just remember thinking, I told him, I was like, well, if we do that, they won't have Southern accents. So we're going to need to fix that. Like, we have to figure that out. And I was like, I have an idea. It's going to make hundreds of dollars. We can do Sesame Street with different accents. Like, if you want your child to have an accent of where you're from, you can have Sesame Street only in that accent.
Yeah.
And so it would help them. Well, that never panned out and we never moved. So we didn't have to worry about it too much. But I'd still think that could be a good idea. If you're listening, Sesame Street makers might want to look into that.
Like a Canadian Sesame Street?
Well, no. So if we lived in Canada, we would need a Southern Sesame Street so that our children would have Southern accents and wouldn't speak like a boot, you know? But it turned out fine.
Oh, you betcha, eh?
Right.
You imagine Big Bird eating boiled peanuts?
Oh, yes, I can. Well, Mr. Snuffleupagus would love them.
Oh, yeah.
They could share.
That's a great point.
In my last one, we would be remiss to leave out Carmen Sandiego. Where in the world?
God, Rockapella.
I dressed up as her a couple Halloweens ago.
Really?
Yes. And I was just in Park Circle. That's the answer to the riddle. I didn't go very far.
Man, I used to love Park Sandiego and Carmen Sandiego. So you got me
Park Circle Sandiego.
That's, you know what? That's the name of the episode.
Oh, maybe. Well, yeah, but they also had the video game. Remember?
I never played
it. It was a computer game. It was the precursor. It was kind of like the Oregon Trail.
Okay.
It wasn't fancy, but you had some options, and you could plug in the information and learn about different places in the world.
Wow, I never knew that. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, Carmen Sandiego. And just going back to Justin Wilson, because I remember Justin Wilson would come on and then Julia Child would come on right after that too. And I used to love watching her because she had such a strong British accent. This is Julia Child, bon appetit. I used to love that.
Yeah.
And I remember Justin Wilson, I think Ruffles had a Cajun flavored.
Yeah, they did.
They had a Cajun cheddar flavored potato chip. And I remember he was on the commercial. And I thought that was the coolest thing because I wasn't aware of who Justin Wilson was at first. My first memory of him was from that Ruffles commercial, and then I was just flipping through PBS one Saturday, and I was like, "Oh, that's the dude from the potato chip commercial."
He's got the bolo tie.
Yep.
And he had a big fat hand, and he would pour salt and just be talking. He'd tell you like 3 sentences, and he'd still be pouring salt in his hand. And it would be like a mound, and then just a pinch of salt, and he'd throw the whole handful in. But it looked delicious.
Yeah, it did. So, another rite of passage as a teenager was learning to drive. And I remember my learning to drive experience. So I'm curious as to what yours was.
You don't want to go first?
You know what? I'll go first.
Okay, go first.
All right. So me learning to drive, first of all, full disclosure, it took me about 3 times to get my learner's permit.
Okay.
I did not brush up on my driver's manual nearly as good as I thought, or nearly as good as I should have.
That was the book test?
Yes.
Okay, continue.
Well, this one, if you know what I'm talking about, the Monk's Corner DMV, whenever you take the test for your learner's permit, they had these wooden machines at the back of the building, and basically they would have this little mini partition that would cover up the correct answer, and there would be a multiple choice. So if you got the answer wrong, that thing would just make this loud clack clack noise. And it clacked a little more times than I wanted it to. And I'll never forget, there was a dude that was on the other side of the velvet rope with his license plate in his hand. I guess he was getting his license renewed or whatever. And he turned around. He was like, well, you're having a rough time with the test, aren't you? So, I mean, there was just one clack, 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 clack. I'm like, oh, my God.
And in that small town, everyone knew how many clacks you got before you even got out the door.
Yeah, the bad news travels fast. And eventually, like I said, on the third try, I got my learner's permit. And then I felt like I was just, like, sky was the limit.
Yeah.
And so Mom would take me, like, driving I would ride with her during the summers. She had a company car, and before a lot of people know her as being a school teacher, but before she was a school teacher, she was a CAT scan technician, and she would work at different hospitals. Like the company she worked for, basically it was like the CAT scan was in a tractor trailer, and they would go to some of the more lower income counties in the state. So she would go Bamberg, Barnwell, Hampton, Allendale, Edgefield, like that section. And so I would ride with her in the summers, and then on driving back, she would let me drive, just to get my driving experience. And then around that same time, her old car, which was my first car that she passed down to me, was an '84 Nissan 200 SX Turbo, and it was a stick shift. And I remember one day I was like, you know what? Actually, let me back up. Let me talk about the time that I got my driver's license. That one I actually got on the first time, but the woman, the driving instructor, she was such a jerk.
Miss Vanessa.
I can't remember her name, but
she was strict.
Yeah.
But I'm glad she was, because we needed that. So
Yeah.
we'd be better drivers. But yeah, go ahead. How bad did you do?
So actually she the thing that really had me sweating bullets was the 3-point turn. I actually did the parallel parking great, but the 3-point turn, for some reason, I don't know why, the nerves just got to me, because I think that was the last task she needed me to do before we drove back to the DMV. And then we pulled up into the DMV parking lot, and she was like, all right, put it in park. All right, did this wrong, did this wrong, did this wrong. And already I'm feeling defeated on the inside. She was like, could have did this a little bit better, but ultimately you passed. I'll never forget. It was October 27th, 1995. And I drove my mom and used my mom's company. It was like a little blue Ford Tempo. And I used that car and I passed the test. And I was like, yes. That was the best feeling in the world. But now fast forward to what I was saying. I was going to drive to school, and Mom had taken her company car to work. She was already gone. And the other dad was, he had just got the Nissan fixed, and the bus was already gone. So my only means of getting to Berkeley High School was to take the Nissan. Now, everybody was already gone, and I'd never drawn stick ever in my life. So it went about as bad as you thought it would have. So,
and you don't live close to the school. That's like,
well, for me, from my house to Berkeley High School is about an 8-minute drive. It took me 53 minutes to get to school. I was stalling out. I'm surprised I didn't burn a clutch out. I pretty much drove the whole way there in second gear. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was determined, and I got there. So yeah, those were some of my earliest memories of learning how to drive. So what were your memories?
Well, I learned on dirt roads when I was like 12. Like my dad would just be like, come get me at this deer stand and like leave me with the keys. and then I had to back a lot of boat trailers like that.
Oh, wow.
I still, like, my eye twitches. If I have to back a trailer, like, my eye will start twitching. I feel real tingly because that is high pressure.
Yeah.
And, like, especially in Berkeley County, like, everybody will stop and watch, like, oh, you think you know what you're doing. But the key is you put your hand at the bottom of the steering wheel, and then you move your hand in the direction you want the trailer to go, and then the trailer will start going in that direction. Then you follow it up. Mm-hmm. That's key. Now, I don't recommend that that's how you should start learning how to drive when you're 12 and 13, because you miss a lot of big picture things that you need to know about. And so I was one of the oldest in our class. My birthday was in November, so I was like, nobody really went ahead of me to tell me how to prepare. And I did fine on the written part, but the driving part, Miss Vanessa, who I should not have passed me. Thank you for, but man, at the time I was so upset about it because I thought I had done all right. You know, like we were alive, we were in one piece.
Yeah.
And she seemed cool about it, but boy, and she had like these real nice nails, and she was tapping with her pencil, and like she was making a lot of notes. And so when we park, she's like, well, here are all the reasons you failed.
Oh.
And so just started right out. I was like, okay, I'm listening. And then, so you had to wait, I think a month or something, go back and try again. But man, that was the longest month because like I thought I was going to have it and then I didn't. And then I drove a 1986 GMC Jimmy.
I remember that.
It was black with red interior.
Yep.
And that red interior, remember it would fall down, like all the glue would come loose, so I would tack it up. But sometimes those would fall, and then you have to hold it up with one hand, drive with the other hand. You turn right, and the radio would turn off. I remember one of the first times I was allowed to drive somewhere. It was the Jamboree, the high school Jamboree down at the Citadel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Sertoma Classic.
Yeah, so it's like, and somehow we like Jamela and Devora and I want to say Latrice Liferidge and Jenny and Michelle, and like that was already I met more people than should have been in the GMC Jimmy. And my dad was meeting us up there with some other people, and I, we were just having the best time talking. We're leaving up out of there, and I just get on the James Island Connector going to James Island. And like, I'm just driving. I'm like, man, I don't remember this part. And all of a sudden I look over, my dad's doing like 80 to catch up. He's like, what are you doing? This is before cell phones. He's like rolling down the window screaming at, what are you doing? Where are you going? I was like, we'll get there. It'll be fine. We'll just go down here and take a ride. Oh, I got in trouble for that.
Man, I tell you, you were brave to navigate through downtown Charleston of all places.
I mean, but I felt like I knew where I was going because I'd been there, but it's just different when you're in charge of driving and you haven't been paying attention to what's the one-way streets and what's not until it's all on you. And I'll tell you, my son is going next weekend to do his driver training.
Ooh, okay.
So, you know how much you got to pay now to have a drive? It's like a day of driving. It's like $500.
What?
To have driver training, but you got to do it because if you don't, then your insurance is like 80 times more.
Wow.
I mean, they got you where they want you. I tell you what.
Yeah, no kidding.
But no wonder these kids these days aren't driving like they used to. And I mean, maybe there's a reason the insurance is higher than what we were up to.
Yeah.
You know, sorry about that. We might have contributed.
Yeah.
But
our bad.
Sorry.
So to wrap up this episode, what were some of the things that you learned on this episode?
I learned that you've been doing these very cool outings with the state stuff. Like what's the name of the whole thing?
Harvesting Heritage.
Harvesting Heritage. Yeah. I want to really dig a little deeper. I want to hear more about this because that's awesome. And like who's the body that's over this?
South Carolina State Museum.
Okay.
Then it's hosted by Chef Amethyst Ganaway, who's actually from North Charleston.
Okay.
She
name.
She hosts the panel. Actually, I had her on the podcast a while back. It was me, her, and one other guest. We did a chain restaurant bread tournament episode. That was really fun. But she basically is the panel. She's the host of the panel, and then they have like three different speakers from that particular region. Just
That's
like
awesome.
just imparting some wisdom and some history on us that a lot of people weren't aware of, myself included. So yeah, it's always a good time.
What'd you get into? What'd you learn?
I learned that you were handling these vehicles at such a young age and like backing up to like hitch the trailer to the boat at 12. Man, that's
a warm
crazy.
Body to mash the gas.
Yeah, you talk about a trial by fire experience. I thought driving stick, 7 miles was one thing, but yeah, backing into a boat landing, putting your thing into a boat landing at age 12. That's a whole nother level right there. So thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for watching Growing Up Low Country with Liz and Danny. Make sure you subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Like, download, all that good stuff. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find my YouTube channel at Danny Foxworth 843. There you can find the videos for every episode of this podcast, as well as my other podcast, Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth, my Candle podcast, A Wicked Good Time with Danny Foxworth, and my baseball podcast, which is At the Plate with Danny Foxworth. You can find all those on my YouTube channel. Again, subscribe at Danny Foxworth 843. And for Liz and myself, this has been another episode of Growing Up Low Country with Liz and Danny. Until next time, y'all be good. Talk to y'all later.